Hello there, this is my first video in English, so I hope I won't bother you with my accent, since English is not my native language obviously. As the title of the video suggests, I want to discuss the ending of the manga The World God Only Knows. This manga is one of my favorite things from Japanese media or the whole media in general, so naturally, as you can guess, the ending affected me very much, and I was disappointed. Very disappointed. And I wasn't the only one.
If Chihiro wins, I'll eat my shit!
Yo, wait, what the fuck? I'm not even mad, I'm just confused, this seems out of nowhere. I wish I went to sleep. I shouldn't have stayed up. This isn't something I wanted to see ever. Just fucking why? What the fuck is wrong with Wakaki?
Your tears are delicious.
I felt a great disturbance in the force, as if millions of voices suddenly cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced. I fear something terrible has happened.
Also, there was that guy, Genetic123, who created a Hitler reaction video where he expressed his thoughts about the whole thing.
Jeder hat mich belogen, sogar die SS! Die gesamte Generalität ist nichts weiter als ein Haufen niederträchtiger, treuloser Feiglinge!
Mein Führer, ich kann nicht zulassen, dass die Soldaten, die für Sie verbringen...
Nicht als Feiglinge! Verreiter, Versager! Ich mir eine Kugel durch den Kopf. Tun Sie, was Sie wollen.
And now he actually hates the whole manga and other works of Akaki Tamaki, just to make clear he made a mistake. So in the end...
Nothing will stand in our way. I will finish what you started.
Okay, I'm not that deranged, but I was very upset to say the least. There were minor things, like that scene at the ship in the beginning of the last arc, that I thought was cool, and I was expecting it to happen even until the very end, but it didn't. Also, that was that thing with the satyr which escaped, so this plot point didn't have a satisfying ending. But oh man, how I hated that Keima chose Chihiro of all people. I decided to make this video to figure out, was the final choice justified in any sense, because the whole explanation didn't satisfy me. So let's begin.
Press start.
So Keima confesses to Chihiro, she rejects him, and then at the meeting with Nikai Dokuro he states that he planned this to get goddesses hostesses to leave any attempts to date him so he can get on with his life, while being alone won't do it, and if he chose someone from goddesses hostesses it won't be right. He complains that Chihiro always doesn't do what he says, on what Nikai suggests that this is why he fell in love with her in the first place. Well, his expression doesn't confirm it, but he doesn't deny it. The thing that bothers me is that author tries to imply that there is logic behind why Keima chose Chihiro in the first place, and it implies that she is the most unpredictable one, thus making her more interesting. But is the challenge a real reason to choose a partner in life? I don't think so, because it's not romantic, it's pragmatic. And it's definitely not the reason to choose someone above all the others. I mean, does it really make her better than them? Is it really the point? Because other people are dumb and predictable and she's the most complex one? Is she even that complex and unpredictable? Well, let's look at her first conquest arc. It starts with a scene at the school, which shows Keima, who is depressed because he certainly won't be able to catch all the loose souls. Elsie asks Chihiro to cheer him up, but she refuses and says that he is gross. He walks out and Tsunderes that her words don't concern him, while it's clearly shown that he is affected by them. Well, this scene can indicate that he feels something for her, but this moment never came up later, which is a shame, because this could have been brought up at the end of the manga, as it shows that he felt something for her even before her conquest began. However, there is one interesting thing. There is one chapter in the manga where Keima thinks about what should be considered a galge, a real dating simulator, or just any game where he has to defeat or and get a girl. It concludes with the thought that the girl herself is the main factor. In another chapter, which I want to mention, he tries to beat a buggy game, because as he states, there are no bad heroines, but bad games, and it's his duty to save as many heroines as he can. Considering that he calls the real world crappy game, we can make a conclusion that he generally cares about the girls in the reality, but he won't admit it. This can explain the tsundere moment. Later, they find out that there is a loose soul in Chihiro, so they try to find out her personality in order to conquer her, but she has nothing. That's why Keima is depressed and says that he can't conquer a girl with no apparent parameters. Then they see her confessing her love to the other guy, and he rejects her. She runs in tears. Keima is shocked and states that this kind of game scenario can't happen in a real game. That's make me curious, weren't there any games at all with such a scenario? I mean, he played 10,000 games at least. Do they all present their heroines as someone who can't be interested in other boys? I mean, Keima is very versatile in his conquests because he played so many games and has so many different scenarios in mind. At the first chapter he even admits that the whole Ayumi situation is similar to one exact game he played. Later, after Keima again tsunderes about Chihiro, they encounter her being depressed. That interests Keima, so he tries to think of a move. However, she brushes it off and shows her next love. This pisses Keima off, and he says that she's a shallow person that makes fun of everyone, and tells her that people like her pollute the real world, when she retorts that he's even worse in the sense that he doesn't make reality any better, that he badmouths others, and such person can't judge her in any way. This makes him so depressed that he stays in his room for some days. This shows us several things. Firstly, he was concerned with her being depressed. As I stated before, this can be explained by him secretly caring about the girls in the real life without showing it, and not just about Chihiro. Also, he actually wants to get a loose soul away from her and sees an opportunity. Secondly, his rant and her retort. It is actually impressive that she is able to see his logic and use it against him, but is it really such a feat? It just requires common sense, and even Elsie showed us that she is capable of doing exactly that. Thirdly, him being so depressed that he doesn't leave his home. It even comes this far that when he finally goes to school, he passes out because of starvation and says that even if you try hardest in reality, nothing good will happen. It even seems like he gives up on living at some point. There can be two explanations of it. Either he feels something for Chihiro so it affects him that much, or Keima was initially depressed over not being able to finish the contract during his life, and Chihiro's situation was just the last straw. The former one could be used in the end of the manga to justify Keima's decision, but this never came up later, so I think it's connected with the latter. However, at the end of this arc he ponders about all the girls he conquered that suffered because they tried their best in life and wonders if he should try to do something too. It was a great foreshadowing for the end of the manga, where he said that no matter how hard it will be, he will move forward, like everybody else. So later, Ayumi gives him food and makes him confront Chihiro, who ends up talking about her new crush, so Keima basically calls her an amateur in trying to conquer her love interest without any specific preparations. Chihiro mentions that it just works in Keima's games, and later asks whether Keima even kissed a real girl. So when Keima remembers some of such cases, he blushes and says that it was nothing special. Why he even blushes? I mean, I don't think he intentionally wanted to imply to someone that he had romantic relationships, because it could mess with his task, so it's safe to assume that he was actually embarrassed. Why is he so sincere with Chihiro? This is the third case which shows that he has feelings for her. Moving on to the scene when she decides to give up on confessing love to the hot boy at the last minute and mentions that she was apparently never in love with him in the first place. This enrages Keima because everyone, which means every girl he conquered, were giving their all and she doesn't. Chihiro answered that she is just a girl without any apparent talents and abilities, so she won't succeed even if she's being serious. Then she runs away and Keima realizes that she indeed has a parameter. He doesn't exactly say a personality, but a parameter, which means he can use his game strategies on her. This is an important moment that Chihiro shippers usually forget, because when he actually understands her motives and says that she can shine on her own, he's actually acting. Because when he doesn't, it ends up like the final part of Goddess's arc when he kinda marries Ayumi. But even then he says nonsense about how everything should go according to the game logic. So this is why I think Keimo conquers her with gaming knowledge and isn't actually fully sincere with her, because when he is sincere, he says stuff that makes others uncomfortable. Because in order to succeed, he wants to have everything under control. Because when he doesn't, he risks losing his life. And at the end of Goddess's arc, many lives were at stake. Another moment that I want to mention in this arc is the moment Keima says that Chihiro might have the most personality among the others, and that she badmouths as an S-class heroine, because she brought him down that time with just her logic. I really don't understand why mangaka wanted to make Chihiro that special, because as I have already mentioned earlier, anyone with a common sense can make a retort that Keima himself is running from reality. I'm lazy to pinpoint the exact moments in the manga, but even Elsie had enough intelligence to figure out just that. And if anyone were to be at Chihiro's place, they could make the same argument, and it won't make that person a genius. Chihiro says that she wants to shine like the others that she admires, but she isn't as special as the others. This is a very relatable problem, and an opinion of fans of Chihiro makes her the most special heroine among the others, because that kind of girls don't usually appear in Galgi. Well, I haven't played as many dating sims as Keima, or at least as Wakaki-sensei, but this type of personality is the most common thing anyone can imagine in real life. Everyone wants to shine at some point. Everyone has some kind of ambition, and that's why I can't make a conclusion that she is the most special one and the most real one amongst the other girls. Initially, I wanted to say that most of the girls are as relatable as Chihiro, but then I realized that the manga is working on the monster of the week basis, and most of the time girls have some kind of quirks that makes them seem unreal, but most of the problems are relatable indeed. In my opinion, the most relatable girl is Yui Goido. The first time she was shown, while being from a rich family, it was pointed out that she was oppressed all her life to behave as her mother thinks she should, and she even makes Yui quit her favorite hobby, which Yui does, because she is so much bullied that she doesn't think she can make a decision of her own. In the last arc it was shown that she was abused since she was little, and at one frame it was implied that she was that scared of her mother she screwed up at things, which made her yell at Yui even more. However, after a body swap, when she spends some time in Keima's body, after living an ordinary life in which she doesn't have to obey her mother and she plays drums as she always wanted to, she feels finally happy, but then she realizes that she basically steals Keima's happiness, and she has always pitied herself when she could have always stood up on her own and defied her mother. Later, after the conquest, when she became a reverse trap, she still argues with her mother, and at one point her mother even tries to take her to the nunnery, though it's shown in a comedic way, but the point still stands. It shows that living in such a toxic family and finally standing up to yourself is very hard, and you can still get hurt even if you try to make boundaries. I think it's a very relatable situation, whether Wakaki-sensei wanted it initially to be so or not. Other characters' backstories and whole developments in the manga don't resonate with me as well, but there can be some mentions. Kanon Nakagawa suffered from being ignored when she tried her best to shine, and in the end when Kanon said that she is willing to sing just for Keima, he refused and explained that if she can't recognize her own self-worth without the validation of other people, then in that case she will be invisible for the rest of her life. This can be applied to any creative person that has met at some point negativity or ignorance. However, the way things are resolved in this arc can't be applied to everyone. Keima basically says that Kanon's songs are great, and she's already amazing because she was able to get such a big crowd. As a creative person myself, even I meet a lot of positive comments for my works. If there is a negative one somewhere, it will stand out and I will question myself. And for the massive crowds she gathered, I think that some people can say that a million flies can be wrong, if you get what I mean. And in some sense, they are right. So in general, this kind of encouragement can't solve all the problems. But what I want to say is that the situation is really relatable, even if the archetype idol is not. At the end of the manga, we can see a snippet of Kanon's childhood when she is basically a loner and depressed kid. Keima states that she has a talent and it's a burden that tormented her, so now she is prepared to bear it. Shiori Shiomiya is a very shy girl that just can't handle dealing with people, because she thinks too much and is too scared to act, so she isolated herself in the library when she can appreciate books without dealing with people. In the end of the arc, Keima tells her that she actually wants to talk with people and just too scared to do so. So he just encourages her by giving her courage. While the whole books and obsession with reading them and remembering all the stuff in the library is very superficial, avoiding speaking with people while actually wanting to can be quite relatable, at least for me. It's a shame that there was no Keima for me when I was a teenager and I just was alone. At least, but that's another story. There is a commentary from the author himself that I will just quote, because he explains himself quite well. There are two types of silent people, the ones who are truly reticent, and the ones who actually want to talk, but can't. Since I took a lot of humanities classes when I was a student, I had many friends who actually wanted to talk, but couldn't. Though they wouldn't participate in an actual conversation, they would show small reactions to what we were talking about, or make comments in a really small voice, or simply stare at someone without saying a word, just like Shiori did. I think that this type of person actually holds words in high esteem. When you asked them if they have something to say, they would reply, about what you were discussing earlier, and they would talk about a subject that we had discussed quite a while ago. Talking to that type of person is more interesting. While there are heroines that have relatable problems and for me are admirable, there is one heroine aside from Chihiro that makes me mad and not in a good way. The whole arc with Jun Nagase is a mess when you think about it. The whole deal with her is that she harasses people with her ideals so much that they at the end reject those ideals and leave her. And as Keima has found out, this also happened at school, where she has made a whole basketball team leave her because she was just that intense. He even mentions that because of her, her school never had any basketball teams later. And when he straight up tells her that, she just runs away and yells, "You're so selfish! What I'm supposed to do?" And here comes the worst part. Keima basically tells her that she should continue harassing people with her ideals, because people are weak and they won't accept ideals that easily. Then he runs away and the class she left finds her and apologizes. This happened because Keima and Elsie basically set up people to go look for her and apologize. The problem is that this solution doesn't really help, because if Jun continues to harass people without thinking, she would get more hurt and the hole in the heart will open again. However, Keima comments that sometimes an ideal ending is needed. As I see it, he basically assumes that Jun is dumb and she doesn't realize that sometimes you have to understand people's thoughts and feelings, and to get any results she should try to compromise with them. So he sets up a temporary solution. This kinda ruins the belief that Keima always solves the problem that opened up the gap in their hearts, so in the future they wouldn't open up again. But the solution of Jun's arc won't solve the problem, because if she continues to impose her ideals on other people, she would get hurt again, and a gap in her heart will reappear. However disturbing this might be, this is one of the arcs that sets up the idea of the manga's ending. At least that's what author says. I just hope Wakaki-sensei doesn't actually believe that the solution in the Jun's arc is ideal. So the last heroine, or a pair of heroines, that I want to mention are Kusunoki and Hinoki Kasuga. The whole thing begins with the conquest of Kusunoki Kasuga, a martial artist who had an internal struggle. She was expected to inherit the dojo and to uphold the name of the leader. In her opinion, she has to be a man, in the sense that she can't act feminine and of course be attracted to cute stuff. And in the end, she basically fought herself, in metaphorical and quite literal sense, to get rid of that part. However, Keima just told her that it's okay to be feminine, because there is no contradiction in being cute and strong at the same time. When she tries to deny that, Keima says that I didn't like the way it was said in the manga, so I looked for the anime version of it. When you gain something from sacrificing other things, it always feels incomplete, so maybe she just needs to find a greater strength. The problem itself is quite artificial, as the mangaka stated it, that he basically just thought, what if the girl like that existed? However, being oppressed and brainwashed by a family to do a thing you don't really want to is kinda relatable situation for me. Her sister's arc was about Hinoki loving Kusunoki, supporting her weak self and meeting her expectations. Initially, Kusunoki was a very weak child that needed someone strong to support her, and Hinoki tried to be someone like that. She felt her admiration and was scared that Kusunoki would collapse without her or wouldn't love her anymore. So she tries to rise even more in the eyes of her sister, and at the end leaves the dojo, because she felt she couldn't betray Kusunoki's high expectations. Then when she returns and tries to settle down, she sees that Kusunoki became great herself, so she becomes scared that she would have to become even a bigger person. So in culmination, Kusunoki understands her and says that she also suffered because Hineki left the dojo and she had to become its successor. And most importantly, she didn't love her for being cool or strong, someone who is dear to her. This arc certainly made Hineki quite a relatable person, a girl that had many talents and was admired by her sister so much she was scared to disappoint her, so she tried to achieve new heights, even when she didn't want to. This arc also deepens Kusunoki's character, because we now know that she was initially not capable of leading the dojo, and had to struggle to do so. Well, I can continue analyzing other conquests, but I have already made my point. Plus it would make this video unnecessarily longer, while all I want is to explore the reason and necessity behind the ending of the manga. So what I want to say is that there were relatable heroines and their problems were also real. You can say that other girls have quite unique backgrounds and they are not as common as Chihiro's one. But come on, even the author states that he didn't intend it at first to make an arc about her, but his editor was fond of this support character and this just gave him idea to make an arc about a normal person. It's easier to make a classmate that just into hot guys relatable. But funny thing is, to make an arc about a person, mangaka had to give her a problem and a personality, to make her relatable and to make her stand out. But as I said earlier, she just dreams to be special, to shine like people she admires, and that aspiration is a basic human one, but maybe not a Galgi one. So let's talk about her in the next arcs of the manga. She basically starts a new band. Until the start of Goddess's arc, she's just a side character. However, when the search for goddesses starts, Keima figures out that she might be a host to a goddess. Then when most of the goddesses are found and revived, there is only one goddess left and two girls remain, Chihiro and Ayumi, so he has to make a choice which girl should be reconquered. One moment of Chihiro's unpredictability stands out. When Keima becomes ill and realizes that he can use it to make an event, he decides to invite Ayumi and tries to make sure Chihiro doesn't come to him. But at the end, they both come. Chihiro confesses to Keima and Ayumi decides to let Chihiro have Keima and steps aside. This is one of the rare moments of unpredictability of Chihiro. However, a regular person can figure out that after the way he talked to her on the phone, she could come to visit Keima, but that's just my speculation. Then when Ayumi refuses to stay with Keima, he figures that something happened without him knowing, and while he knows both girls have some kind of sympathy to him, he can't certainly be sure which one has the goddess. So he directly says to Ayumi that he's going with Chihiro to figure out her reaction. Ayumi tells that she's not angry. So when Keima proceeds and later that evening tries to kiss Chihiro, she says this is her first time. That makes Keima confused. I mean, she clearly likes him, but she doesn't remember her conquest. So this might be Yui's case, who also was in love with Keima, but at first didn't remember anything, so he tries to clear things out. When she says she was in love with him before he even conquered her, he's more confused because there was no reason for her to love him. And then she says that sometimes there are no logical reasons to love someone, it just happens. I will return to it later, but it's an important plot point. Later, Keima rudely rejects her, saying that he wanted to prank her like that. She runs away, and this is seen by Ayumi. Then later he tries to reconquer Ayumi, but she tells him to apologize to Chihiro. So after a few attempts to get Ayumi's attention, Keima realizes that Chihiro somehow must be removed from this love triangle. Later, Keima tries to lure and reconquer Ayumi again, but is interrupted several times, till Chihiro invites them all to her friend's home nearby. Keima says, and this is important, that now he definitely can conquer Ayumi, but he just needs a little time. So then Chihiro tells Ayumi that he manipulated them both. Ayumi runs away, and Chihiro says to Keima that in order to conquer Ayumi, he should also fall in love with her. I mean, I get where Chihiro's coming from. She knows that Keima manipulated Ayumi, so she wanted Keima to be sincere to her friend because she feels this is the right thing to do. But the war is about to start, and the only way to avoid more casualties is for Keima to revive the last goddess. Basically, she's putting lives of the whole town at danger because she just feels sorry for her friend. Sure, she explains that she has done it to remove herself from love triangle, but the way she has done it made things worse. There is no guarantee that Ayumi will accept Keima now. And yes, I know that there is a scene later when it's shown that Chihiro explains to Ayumi that there was a reason behind Keima's actions. And if she's curious, she can ask him herself why she didn't tell about this exact thing to Keima. This could be useful for him, because then he would know that Ayumi doesn't think he's just a terrible womanizer. He has an important goal, and somehow all this is justified. But she didn't tell Keima that, so she just wanted Keima to confess about everything, for him to lose control. But Keima doesn't know any other way to deal with girls. This can be the right thing to do, but not the right time. And even the scene when she pushes Ayumi to Keima doesn't justify her actions, when she doesn't know or look at the whole picture. Maybe I interpret things the wrong way or didn't get everything right, but from my perspective her actions were dangerous and, as it turns out, really unnecessary. After the end of this arc starts a new one, Heart of Jupiter, and mostly Chihiro isn't present in it, aside from her small cameos as a kid. One of them was the moment when she appeared and Keima remembered her and Ayumi getting hurt, and thus getting into a depression. In the context of what happens at this moment in the manga, I interpret this as Keima remembering what it's like to hurt people you at least somehow care about. And when he realizes that Tenri may be already in love with him, he figures out that the way things are going, she will end up doing a terrible task for 10 years and at the end won't receive any love from him. So he tries in one another time to change the series of events, but fails. There is another time when Chihiro makes an appearance, but this time Keima just takes off his wig and sadly goes away from her. So then he returns to the present and the ending comes. So let's get to the main point of this video. Was it shown that Chihiro is unpredictable? The only time I remember was when she went to see him at home while he thought she wouldn't, but that's it. Is she the most real one? She is indeed relatable to most people, because she really doesn't have any apparent talents, and that's the thing Keima usually despises. However, the whole manga is about Keima learning about the real world and the people in it, that imperfection is ideal, that people actually try hardest at the shitty game known as reality, searching for answers, that you can't get a happy ending if you want to finish a difficult game with ease, that if you don't act, the shitty reality will be the same. And most importantly, Keima says at the end that although it's a ridiculous and disorderly world, but there was no game worth playing more than this. And there was that statement that heroines need to be saved even in the shitty games. What I'm trying to say is that he does consider Chihiro to be a heroine, a S-class one, because she threw him off. But I mentioned at that part of the video that she just understood Keima's very simple logic and just used it against him. I think even Elsie, who usually is a person with a common sense around Keima, could figure out something like that, and I don't think other heroines are less intelligent. So why exactly Keima chose her at the end? I don't think that she is that unpredictable, that she is that complex. So did he get in love with her ordinary part? Her whole arc was all about her aspiration to shine, to be someone admired. You can't just fall in love with a person who tries to be special. This isn't that extraordinary. Most of the people want to be admired, but usually don't get any admiration because there's nothing to be admired, aside from just having average characteristics. So I believe that Chihiro's being an S-class is, sorry for the language, bullshit, or maybe Keima just have such low standards, but I don't see how she's better or more real than the others, aside from being more average. Okay, so let's look at this from a different angle. Keima mentions that he chose Chihiro because it's the only way the harem can be dissolved with less suffering. But is it? The whole point of the ending is moving on, even if the reality is unfair. So I guess he just did all he could, and this is a more realistic ending. But is it what he had in mind when he said he kinda sees what the perfect world looks like, so he needs to get to the true ending? All he did was a confession to hosts of the goddesses that he actually loves Chihiro and they have to move on. But was that it? I mean, their feelings won't disappear that easily. When he chose Chihiro, he just hoped that hosts of the goddesses won't bother him anymore. Actually, every girl in the harem still feels bad. It's also not true because Yui states that she won't give up on Keima anyway. So this is, as Dokuro says, a very selfish logic. He doesn't want to deal with the consequences, he doesn't want to make everyone happy or to achieve an ideal ending. He just pretends that what he does is necessary, but what it actually solves. He just says to every girl, I love Chihiro, deal with it, and that's it. He doesn't achieve an ideal ending for everyone, he wants it for himself. After all this talk about a perfect world and a true ending, this was a real letdown. So, could he really love Chihiro? Yes, he could. There were his tsundere moments in her conquest arc, and the last moments of the goddesses arc kinda implied that he regrets hurting Chihiro. However, his tsundere moments were never explained or referenced, and the last moment of goddesses arc, he couldn't know that after the festival he wouldn't need to conquer girls because apparently the color was there, so I always interpreted the scene as that he just didn't want Chihiro to be hurt anymore when he has to conquer even more girls after the festival, and he feels guilty for doing so. However, this is just my interpretation, and while I think his love for Chihiro could be explored more, it could have just happened. The real question is, does Chihiro deserve Keima more than the other girls? She is indeed the most average one, but that doesn't make her better, because other girls have real personalities and real struggles, while maybe being more common archetypes in Galge, I guess. Actually, when I was making this video, I noticed one interesting thing. Before Keima says that he will move forward like everybody else, he told that he doesn't see any right choices. This actually kinda justifies the ending, in a sense that ending we got isn't the thing he wanted at all, and it certainly isn't the perfect ending. So as I see it, Keima wanted to make everybody happy in the long run. Too bad the actual ending showed that very poorly. Okay, let's conclude. The ending is not ideal, it's the most realistic one. However, we are talking about a story with demons, goddesses, and time travelers. Why couldn't Keima ask goddesses to leave the girls, and then ask Dokuro, who still has contacts with the new hell, to delete the memories of the girls? I know this sounds very underhanded, but is the ending we got better? This didn't bother Keima that much in the past, and now it would only make other girls feel less heartbroken. Also, he could have said thanks or something to Tenri because of what she had suffered. Is Chihiro the perfect choice? Well, I didn't get the impression that Keima was certainly in love with Chihiro all this time, and while he could have been, she isn't better than the others, she is just as good as. Another thing that people who liked the ending mention is that Keima choosing Chihiro is the way authors show that Keima accepted the real world, but I believe this wasn't the only way he could have done so. There was one scene in the last arc when Keima basically said that if he had a lot of money, he would have made games. So I guess the ending could have shown him being alone, and after a time skip could have shown him participating in making games or becoming rich and investing in it. He is smart, so he could have just made the world better, and this way he could have accepted the reality and won the shitty game. Maybe to other people accepting reality means giving up and just trying their best, but in my opinion the person who really wants to make the world better would strive to succeed in it. There was that phrase that Aizen from Bleach said.
世界とはそういうものなんですよ。
それは敗者の理論だ。勝者とは常に世界がどういうものかではなく、どうあるべきかについて語らなければならない。私は
And making ideals into reality and striving to achieve them while not being to do so completely were some of the themes that were explored in the manga. People that like the ending usually just brings down the whole manga to the moment where main character chooses a girl. And always justify it because he chose the real one, she's special because she's ordinary, and this is very unusual for the dating sims or harem anime. And while this manga indeed was the story of a person accepting reality and trying to participate in it, and while there are some anime or manga that explore the same theme, the thing that made Kaminomi's different is the way it was interpreted. We learn that while the world is imperfect and illogical, there are people who try their best to achieve their dreams, to make ideals come true, to seek beautiful things, and while it's hard, if you don't try your best you won't win in this game. And at the end of the line, you will feel that it was all worth it. And I believe to accept reality in a way the manga was telling us is to accept the rules and trying the best you can to achieve your true ending. But had Keima tried his best to achieve his true ending? I think he just used an excuse of doing the right thing to end the harem, to avoid dealing with other girls' feelings and just accepting the most regular girl he could find, so he would believe he has improved. Maybe the other people are satisfied with it, but I really loved the manga and even the last arc, and the ending was really disappointing to say the least. So this is my first video in English, and first video where I talk this much. I just wanted to show that there are people that think that the ending wasn't great not because their waifu wasn't chosen, but because the manga strayed from the things that made it good in some people's eyes. I just hope that some people would understand where I am coming from and maybe discuss it with me. Maybe they will find better arguments for or against my point of view. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye.